So just to set the scene, I think it is probably one of the first time, if not the first time, that we have a whole panel dealing with governance of space activities in an IAF event. Space law has been part and parcel of the IAF since the birth of the IAF in the 1960s, because the IAF actually created the International Institute of Space Law, of which I had the honor of being 25 years a board member, of which 9 as its president and currently president emerita. So we have always been part of the IAC and all the conferences organizing colloquium on space law. But to have a podium in one of the global conferences is really, I think, an achievement, and I thank the IAF for providing us with this opportunity. Because, as I also said this morning, space law is no longer an isolated issue. It is. We used to have our sessions in a room at the IAC, and nobody would join us. And nowadays, actually, we see even in the International Astronautical Congress that space law papers permeate into all of the other technical sessions as well. So we do the colloquium as well, but we really see that awareness that space law and governance are important aspects. And so even in this panel, we have some lawyers and we have some non-lawyers, and I applaud their courage to also join us, and I promise we will not go into nitty-gritty of legal details, but really, for me, also policy and law and regulation are closely related. So we have that body of governance that has emerged since the dawn of the space age. And governance, when you talk about it, what is it really? There is not really a definition, right, of what governance is. It is really the system of who the actors are and what the instruments are and what the important challenges are for space exploration, for instance. And of course, we have seen also over the past few days that there are quite a few challenges, and not in the least because of security, safety, sustainability issues, and of course also the privatization, commercialization of space activities, which create challenges for the governance system as it has been in existence for the first nearly 6 decades of space exploration. So we can think of course, things like space resource utilization, or the large constellations of thousands of satellites in low Earth orbit, or the need for space traffic management, or the fact that we have so many new actors, state and non-state actors. What are the relations? What are the obligations? So many more states that are developing national legislation. How do we make sure that there is at least some level of harmony? We see new actors like the European Union becoming very interested in space because of its strategic importance. We see new collaborations across the globe that are emerging with things happening because of geopolitics, which are, of course, we've spoken about it, which are concerning, but which may actually also open up new opportunities for cooperation. So I could go on with more topics. I just wanted to read one paragraph of the Pact for the Future that was adopted by the United Nations last September. It has 56 actions that were adopted by the United Nations after a lengthy process. And the last of those actions, and you could say, why are we the last? But it's actually nice because, you know, you sometimes read the first page and the last page. So action 56 reads, "We will strengthen international cooperation for the exploration and use of outer space for peaceful purposes and for the benefit of all humanity. And we reaffirm the importance of the widest possible adherence to and full compliance with the 1967 Outer Space Treaty," and so on and so forth, and establish a new framework for, and then 3 topics are specifically mentioned, space traffic, space debris, and space resources through UN COPWOS. And also, and that is, I think, also really noteworthy, invite the engagement of the relevant private sector, civil society, and other relevant stakeholders, where appropriate and applicable, to contribute to intergovernmental processes related to increased safety and sustainability of outer space. So there is really also at the global level this acknowledgement, this recognition that things are changing, stakeholders are changing, governance is evolving, and we need to pay attention to that. So we have developed a couple of questions with the panelists, and I actually see already questions coming in here in the panel, which is great, but I'll try to go through a few of them, and I'll do it in random order. Starting actually with you, Ranjana. Very happy that you could make it here, even though it was quite a drive from the city center, I understand. But I wanted you to ask about a recent development in India in the field of space resources, because as we all know, we have several countries that have adopted national laws. One of them is Luxembourg, on space resource regulation. And India, I understand, has also recently adopted a policy, not a law, I guess, on space resources. Could you say a few words about that, please?
Well, firstly, thank you very much, Tanya, and welcome to my country. Thank you. Thank you, all of you, for being here. So why is it that we have a policy and not a space law or a space resources law? Well, that national law is work in progress, so to speak. And in preparation of that, the technical regulations, which are a critical part of any country's space laws, are in the process of being put together. Some part of it already has. The title of that document is Norms, Procedures and Guidelines for Authorization of Space Activities under the Policy 23. And what we have got already is about satellites, establishing satellites, and ground stations. And when I was reading that document, I found that actually it is a wonderful summation of how to implement at national level the long-term sustainability guidelines. And also for the requirement of our companies that will establish ground stations, of all the regulations that are involved with ITU. We are still awaiting a similar set of technical regulations for launch vehicles. And when that is built up, then truly we will be in a position to have a space law, which is a summation of that treaty. And together that makes the national space law. So that's as far as why policy and not law. Now, this is the first time that India has ever articulated a national policy pertaining to space. And this is an outcome of the space reforms because of the decision to enlarge commercial entities into space activities. As far as space resources is concerned, the policy articulates that the focus is, and this is really space resources, so let me talk about India's moon journey. And what you're seeing today is actually a gradual build-up and progression of that moon journey, starting with 2008 and then 19, and of course 23, the Chandrayaan-3. Chandrayaan-4 is a resource recovery project. And this space policy, which mandates the ISRO to undertake studies and scientific studies and so forth in context to in situ resource utilization, celestial prospecting, and other aspects of human habitation, is to be seen in context to that progression and to the next. So that is what it is. A policy by its very nature is an evolving document. And in context to how long will, what is the sort of, what do we expect? Well, the decadal vision document that has been put out by InSpace says that for the next decade, for the next 10 years, the ISRO will be the principal actor in space, both in Earth orbit and beyond. Commercial companies are still nascent at different levels, some embryonic, some nascent, some little bit beyond. And it will take about that much time for them to get up to speed. there is no prohibition on the kind of technologies that they may develop, no problem, collaborate internationally, and a lot of our startup companies do have a great deal of collaboration, have established companies outside the country, all of that. And so the point is, ultimately, when the authorization, the technical documents will allow, and the government of India will take that decision in regard to how they want to approach space resource utilization, especially in context to commercial and otherwise, is in the future. That will happen later.
Yeah, so
Thank
it's
you.
interesting. It's of course a hand-in-hand development of the technical regulations, the policies, and then, as I understand, in different areas, and then ultimately leading to legislation. And of course, it is very much in line with all the ambitious programs that we have been hearing about here these days. So thank you for clarifying that. Bob, this morning already you briefly mentioned a very exciting development for us space lawyers, namely that Luxembourg has issued its first actual license for a space resource company. And so I would like to know a little bit more about that. It's really, that's a first, I think, to do some things on the moon, right?
Yes, that's true. Yeah. So it's right, Luxembourg. We have a dedicated space resource law since 2017 that sets out a bit the conditions that a company needs to fulfill to operate, execute space resource activities under the national law. And back then we were the second country in the world after the US, and in the meantime some other countries have also a space resources law. And this first case comes with the iSpace mission, and iSpace, in particular iSpace Europe, that operates from Luxembourg. And they were awarded in 2020 a contract by NASA for the collection and transfer of ownership of regolith on the lunar surface. So it's a very, it's not as I mentioned this morning, it's not a sample return mission. You don't bring it back, but it's more, the exercise is about understanding how to execute a commercial transaction between two entities on the lunar surface. In this case, between iSpace Europe and NASA. And so basically the contract, what we authorize is the surface operation of the rover collecting and transferring the ownership or the regolith to NASA. And by doing this will be done by taking image and explaining or demonstrating what has been collected. I think also the value of the contract is public. I think they awarded 4 contracts for 50,000 euros. So it's basically, the sum is it's peanuts. The value or the activity as well, I think is of limited use. I think it's more to understand what this means to have a commercial activity or transaction on the lunar surface. And I think for lawyers, I'm not a lawyer by the way, so I try not to comment too many details. It's very interesting to really understand the details behind these authorizations. What does it mean? And because it's a new environment, it has never been done so far. It's also, they are not the guidelines or the standards, as they are not the same guidelines and standards than we have for low Earth orbit, for GEO, where it's very well defined and we have a lot of experience. And this is more, it's a new environment. I think as a regulator on our side, we, as a space agency, we provide advice to the government who issues the authorization. It's also, we are also learning, and I think this will be an evolving process to understand how to do this in the years to come.
Absolutely, it's very exciting. As you said, it's really an illustration of how do we react to a commercial transaction, even though it is mostly exemplary or let's say it's not really a commercial action, but also to authorize and supervise this and to actually decide that you give a license to this is, of course, also a process, right? It is one thing to have a law, but it is another thing to then implement it and to have also the knowledge of what exactly is being done. And I understand correctly, the launch and the lander are authorized by Japan, right? And Luxembourg authorized the rover part of and the transaction part. So it shows also that for any space activity, you will be international also in getting your licenses, right?
Absolutely. I think this is something we understood during the process, how these commercial missions are set up with different commercial actors in the mission. And the national law did not explicitly now foresaw a Japanese transportation provider. And so you need to understand what this means for the law and how to authorize the part that falls under the law, to make sure that it is executed in a safe and responsible way. What does this mean? What are the points you insist? What level of information they need to share? So these are all things. It was very interesting for the Luxembourg Space Agency to really go through this process. I have an end-to-end use case to understand all these detailed questions, and which was now here. It's a small mission, I would say, not to underestimate the value of that mission, but it's the technical scope is limited, is understandable, is clear, is predictable, and so it was but nevertheless it was for us interesting to do this, and I think it will help in the future to improve this over the years. And I think that's also maybe an important point for us is this: we want to create an enabling framework, and without limiting innovation, but we still want to make sure that they are responsible operation, sustainable operation, not dangerous. That so to what this actually means concretely is not so straightforward.
Not so easy, yeah. You have to balance all those different interests, yeah. Very interesting. And the landing is foreseen early June?
Right, yeah. So it's coming up. The landing is scheduled for the 5th of May or the 6th, I think. In Japan will be the 6th, in Luxembourg the 5th. And yeah, we cross fingers that it's successful, that we also see how this plays out. Now we went through the theoretical part, then now we need to see how the mission goes. And yeah, I invite you, it will be available online. And,
we'll all be watching out. Exciting. Zongmin, over to you, because, and we discussed it already a bit this morning, of course, China launched the Initiative for International Lunar Research Station, or ILRS, which is also open to international partnerships, and you have already partnered with states, but also with organizations, universities, I believe. And of course, we have on the other hand also Artemis Accords, and I wanted to know if you could perhaps share a bit more about what kind of principles the ILRS partners would be adhering to, and whether you see any concurrence or divergence with the Artemis principles.
Okay, thank you very much. So I think it's the both of the ILRS, what is initiated and the lead right now is by the Chinese the National Space Agency and also Artemis, which is led by the NASA. As two of the major and the biggest, the large-scale scientific project is the focusing on the moon. So the purpose maybe some of a little bit different, because for us is we are more focusing on the robotic exploration of the moon, and would like to have to establish of the permanent the infrastructures on the surface of the moon, which allowed for the international society, and also it's all of the other countries and partners could be used for some of robotic exploration, and also could be have the habitat for the future of the human, for the astronauts from different countries. I think it's the Artemis is also have a similar purpose, but could be have different, So because it's in the beginning, so should we have some of orbit station, the gateway, but I don't know what it will be changed. Maybe to have some future of a new plan. It also will be provide some of the international cooperation, the platform for all of the partners. But I'm thinking that is the Artemis code and the Artemis program although they have the same name, but they are different because as I know that Artemis the program is origin is come from the ISS, the International Space Station. So it's the major partner is still the developed countries, and although this is so many of countries have signed the Artemis Code, but the Artemis Code is more like some soft law policy, which some of the concept will be acknowledged by those people, not the country. It not means the participation of the program. The RS is a little bit different because this is a program, so we don't have not yet of such of the soft law. Where we have some of initial one of the cooperation initiative in 2 years ago. There's also include some of peaceful utilization, the lunar resource protection, and the international cooperation, and those things. But this is not the code, so it cannot be compared to the Artemis code. But when we do this as international lunar station, the project will let every of the partner, the countries, in the institutions, the researchers will fund his position, will have to fund their contribution, will have a benefit, will have the real participation into the project. So this is the program is some of a little difference. So I think it is some of thinking is maybe different between the RS and the Artemis, but you know that when we initiate the RS, everything is under the legal form of the UN corpus. So we are follow the treaty, the Outer Space Treaty. So we'll protect the environment. We will share some of the samples. For example, the most important case that when we have the lunar sample taken from the near side of the moon, so from the Chang'e 5. So after 1 year, we'll have open the application to the whole of the world. Every scientist in every country, don't know any difference, they can just apply for the scientific study. So you see that is the countries from Europeans, from the Japan, from the United States, those of scientists that have the very treasured sample to start this studies. So this is means that although we don't have the Artemis code, but we are following all of this international law. Go back to the Artemis code because we also have studied the code that is we found them still have inner problem, inner issue. So it's some of inner conflict within those sentences. Therefore, we are thinking that we should have such of a more better of the lunar regulation or some of new of the sentence could be accepted for all of the country, and especially will be under the governance, the form of the United Nations. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, and indeed, we'll come back to that because indeed the United Nations is also taking steps. But just going back one step to the ILRS, what do you think about the fact that there is at least one country, and maybe there will be others, who signed up both to ILRS and Artemis Accords? Do you think that's good or bad, or do you have a view on that?
Yeah, we really welcome the country because it's not say that if you are white and you cannot black. So we welcome every country, even if you already have the member of the Artemis, is also could be the partner of the RS. So we even welcome some of for example, the leading country of the Artemis is also can work together with the RS. It's open to all country, no any difference. So it's although currently it's the most part is the global south, the developing countries, because this is a project is designed. This project is designed for the developing country. So we maximally benefit by the developing country, but it's also we welcomed the traditional the space power. You see that is from the previous the Chang'e program, the most part of the scientific payload, the Petri bag is still from European, yeah. And also in the morning you can see that is even the United States company have some cameras is on the Chang'e 7. So this not means we extract some of a group. We welcome everyone. Yeah.
Thank you for confirming that. That's good to know. Gitanjali, over to you for a legal question, because you mentioned the word benefit, and that is actually a word that we see in the first article of the first treaty that was conducted on outer space, which says the exploration and use of outer space shall be carried out for the benefit and in the interest of all countries, irrespective of their degree of economic or scientific development, and shall be the province of all mankind, humankind, we will say now. Do you think, and if so, what policy and legal changes are necessary to really realize that benefit duty? It's a legal obligation, right? How do you see that?
Thank you, everyone, for attending this session. It's truly an honor to be a part of this panel. Coming to the question, I think what we're seeing now with major spacefaring countries who are making huge leaps in technological advancements and innovation, they are the ones who are taking the lead and leading the front for also making sure that there is a regulatory framework and policy and guidelines in place. The important thing to note here is that that development and that approach should not be taken by just a handful of countries who have those capabilities in the world today. Which is why it's important to have these discussions for policy and what the standards and guidelines should look like at international forums. And I mean, right now, even at the UN corpus, these discussions are taking place. Even if you mention about space traffic management, creation of working groups to address these questions. So that is one aspect of it. The second one is having the national law policies and frameworks also account for novel space activities, because oftentimes they may have a limited scope of the kind of activities that are authorized. And I think Luxembourg has really set a great example with the space resources. And so it's important that even the framing of those laws and policies are actively collaborating with the private sector who are engaged in those activities, because if that collaboration is not done, then that again becomes futile. So of course, policies have to be subject to a review mechanism. And because of the pace at which the industry is innovating, I think that needs to be sort of expedited or, sort of given that regulatory clarity even to promote the private sector. So that those two would be, I think, some of the changes that we will need.
Yeah, I agree. And the fact that you have all these working groups in COPOS on space traffic management, for instance, it also means that all the states who have, in the meantime, joined you in COPOS as members should also actively participate in them. And indeed, the coordination of establishing a national law and coordinating with the private entities what their needs and perhaps showstoppers are is indeed also important. Anjana, we heard that India is really opening up to private industry, space industry at the moment. And how is that going in terms of regulation? Is there also that sort of coordination between the government and knowing what the industry's needs are before regulation is set and policies?
Yes, absolutely. The InSpace, which is the Indian Space Promotion and Authorization Center, is actually itself a startup. We never had a private sector or the thought of a private sector operating on its own. And I must say that InSpace has actually hit the ground running. And for all of us who thought that, what is InSpace and what will it do and what can it do and all of those things, I must say that we paled into insignificance because they're doing a wonderful job. And it is a very interactive relationship between our commercial companies, the new companies that are coming up, new space, and also our established commercial companies that have been suppliers through the government procurement route for India's space program. They too are getting enlarged and ready to undertake activities. So both things are happening simultaneously. And there is intense interaction all the time, I think. She has been part of many of those interactions, and it's a great deal of back and forth, and which is extremely encouraging, I must say.
Yeah, and that's perhaps a new way of governance, because I don't know if that was really the case in the early days. As you said, it was really set by the space powers, right? So that is perhaps a modern way of making governance more sustainable also.
Well, I think it's just like turning a new page and reading the first page and the second page together.
Oh, we definitely do. I agree. I
Yes.
agree. And Bob, how is it in Luxembourg? Because you mentioned also earlier on that need to balance, on the one hand, innovation, on the other hand, overseeing, wanting to enable the industry. Could you say a few words how your government tries to find that balance?
How does it find that?
it is
To
for
balance?
Bob, for Bob. For Bob.
Oh, Bob, for Bob. All right, sorry, I was one. Sorry, thank you.
Yeah, I think it's an important question, and for Luxembourg, the space is seen as a way of diversifying the industry, the economy, and as a small country, we simply do not have the means to do our own missions. So I think we see these commercial opportunities a way to drive and to grow this sector beyond the public funding. So this relation with the public sector is very, very natural and is very deeply rooted in the strategy. I think the goal is to create a sustainable space economy in Luxembourg that can survive and grow without without the state, the public support. Obviously, our support is important in the beginning to develop the first capabilities, the first services or products. But then beyond, I think it's important that the industry also develops these commercial opportunities, and that's we are not this traditional space agency in a sense that we don't have our mission or technology roadmaps, and we see our role as an enabler partner for industry, and I think there we are very much closer to the work in India that InSpace is doing than ISRO, and I think that's the result of the growing space sector in Luxembourg is a bit the result of the policy we are implementing at many different levels, among others through having these different space laws, or the R&D funding we provide, or the talent development we do with the university. So at all these different levels, we try to support this development of an ecosystem in Luxembourg.
Yeah, I like that term, an enabling agency, and that is also perhaps in line with really a transition from governmental to private activities, where you often see, and that's also one of the questions that came here, public-private partnerships, right? It's not even in the United States, where commerce is really taking off much, much faster than so far than in the rest of the world. It is, of course, always a transition. You want to say something about that? Go ahead.
Yes, I wanted to say that in addition to the InSpace, two new associations came to birth around the same time. The first is the Indian Space Association, and the other is the Satellite Industries Association. Now, both of these are forums where our young companies interact with those coming in delegations with their people, foreign countries that come. It is a forum where to country, in informal setting, dialogues happen. And both these are very closely linked and working also, as it happens, within space. So there's a tremendous synergy of these three institutions that is really feeding our system.
Good, yeah. A whole ecosystem of governance we see emerging. Zongmin, going back to you, we all know that outer space and especially low Earth orbit is getting pretty congested. I think China also has plans for constellations of small satellites, right, for providing internet. And we have as one of the governance instruments, of course, the so-called long-term sustainability guidelines, and the sustainability and preserving outer space for future generations is a commitment. How do you see that an agency can, on the one hand, fulfill those principles of long-term sustainability, and on the other hand, promoting innovation? Is there a secret recipe, or how do you see this?
Okay. Okay. I think it's because I'm not. We come from the laboratory. I'm not a real agency, but I'm the we are the subsidiary of the agency. Just to do some technical activity to fulfill the agency's purpose. In my understanding, that is for the agency is because the space, the economy, space industry is a very important part of one of the country, especially the traditional space country. Therefore, that for the agency to do something, for example, the technology innovation, some for regulation reform, and also the industry incentive, and also, of course, the international cooperation, such after also for the method to one hand to stimulate the growing of this space, the technologies, space of economies, space of the industry, and also will be have some of quite the good the regulation for each of the activities. I think that some of actions could be the agency could do. For example, for example, for the innovation of the technology, for the sensitivity, sustainability, that will become light. For example, the launch provider to use the more environment protection technology, and also will be forced to asking have some deorbiting the method that to reduce of the debris in the space, and also will be have some of to make the long term of the space policy, and to reasonably to allocate all of the resources. For example, the frequency, some of resources, and also will be to use some of the foundation to incentive of the new startup and the new commercial companies, and also will be have the to more and more to encourage the young generations to use the education, the training. Some of also will be have established some of environment monitoring the mechanism to have some evaluations. And also the international cooperation is also very important for the agency. So I think is for all of the agencies, a lot of work have to do. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and of course, this need to ensure sustainability by what you said, for instance, having deorbiting mechanisms on board satellites and so on, also creates opportunity for innovation, right? Because you will need companies to build those concepts and so on. So it's also, on the one hand, you could see it is new regulation. On the other hand, it also creates new business incentives.
Yes, for example, in China, it's because we have the traditional force, a giant, the space industry group. So they are taking the most part of the national program, the new missions. For those one, it will be firstly that we have the quite a system of the regulation to light them to ensure the successful rate and the safety of each of the mission. But we also have some of stimulated method to encourage of the new commercial company. For example, the silent manufacturer or the launcher, the manufacturer, say we would to try the new technology, which is the traditional the group is where we're not there to try because it's somewhat risky, but we like the commercial company to use. For example, the reusable launch technology. We have some flat, the satellite technology, have some of new generation of propulsion technology, such as. So we can just balance that for the traditional, the industry group, and also the new company.
Right. And talking about that, for instance, that long-term sustainability guidelines, Gitanjali, coming back to you with another legal question. It's like exam time. You know, so this is really the trend, right? We do not have any new treaties, and that is perhaps a sign of the times. What is your take on that as a working in a commercial company, as a member of the young generation? Do you think it is bad or good, or is it just we have to make do, or would you prefer to have new treaties on debris and space resources and so on? How do you see that?
I think it's important to be realistic and a little bit more practical given the current geopolitical context as well. I do strongly believe that the treaties are great as is. They are meant to be a foundation of strong legal principles that do serve as a strong framework to draw guidelines and standards basis that. And I think it might be difficult. I'm not saying it's completely impossible to have new treaties in the future. But at the same time, because you have the industry needs also emerging in recent times, it's important to be up and moving about the standards and guidelines that countries can collaborate and have those discussions in different forums about what they are doing nationally within their frameworks, what they're thinking of, making sure that the voices of different space companies are also heard and involved in those discussions. So I think it's going, the path forward does look like how the LTS guidelines were achieved. It is a time-consuming process, but it does have its benefits that can be seen even today.
Yeah, for sure, I agree. And one of the areas where that is happening as we speak in Vienna at the moment is, again, space resource governance. Ranjana, actually the vice chair of the working group on space resources, has just presented his what is it called? Initial draft set of recommended principles. Note the words, initial draft set of recommended principles for space resource activities. Have you read them, and what do you think about it?
Well, yes, I did read them and print them out as well. I have to say I'm terribly impressed with the outcome of this. It's very well put together, and it's been done in record time, I think. You know, sort of, I'd say 3 cheers for all the effort that's been put in. I was curious, I don't know whether both of you have read it also, about how it's been put in 2 parts.
Yeah.
Where in general terms, there is a common understanding amongst the working group on certain aspects, and then where there may not be. So I find that differentiation very interesting. Of course, I've gone through it, so I'll wait for your precise question.
Well, what surprised you most, perhaps? Was there something in there that you did not expect, or was there something that you did expect and that wasn't there?
You know, for me, the most significant and important part, and which I hope that all of our countries find consensus, is the second part and the last principle. And that last principle is titled Principle 10 on the review of principles. And if the aim of the exercise is, as the work schedule suggests of the working group, to come up with some norms and guidelines and procedures on all such things, so that all countries can follow, have common understanding and sign into that concept, then, I may be sort of amplifying this, but conflict on the moon is not an option. Much as there is conflict on our Earth, we should not carry it to the next planet. And so this is what I find of extreme significance, which is the last, which says that such revision and amendment may include, but is not limited to, a range of things, including development of potential rules and/or norms for equitable sharing. Mm-hmm. That is the elephant in the room, I think. Among states of the benefits derived from space resources, in brackets optional, I suppose, taking into account the interest of all states, whether or not engaged in such activities, and the development of mechanisms for such benefit sharing. So the Outer Space Treaty itself does not prevent countries from coming together and putting together a viable framework. It may be exactly this or may not be exactly this, but there is nothing that prohibits, and there is therefore no reason why we should not look at this document. It also deals, for example, with liability, which is not in the first part. It talks about perhaps differentiated types of celestial bodies with different kinds of, depending on those. Sustainable commercial use of space resources. And there's something which I find actually not so happy with, which is in context to safety zones. I find that there is no mention in either where there is common understanding or where there isn't common understanding of the second paragraph of Article 4, which is a prohibition on maneuvers and fortification and installations of any kind. That is conspicuous by its absence from anybody's mind, it seems. That I personally, I'm a bit of a peacenik, if you like. I find that a little worrisome. And international mechanisms for licensing, monitoring, coordination. This is missing in the first part. These are the kinds of things I find. There's another one which says that to restore, now where has that gone to? To restore...
to the situation that existed, so that you clean
whereas
up your mess.
in the common understanding it says remediation. Mm-hmm. I have not quite understood how when there are planetary resources that inherently are non-renewable, what does restore mean? And then what does remediation mean? So several things, but overall I think it's a very good start, and I do sincerely hope that just like there was consensus on establishing this working group, that we continue in the same spirit in Copious.
Interesting. I'm sure that we will all now go to the website of the UN Office for Outer Space Affairs and find that document. It's interesting reading. And indeed, it's in two parts. First part where there is generally more or less consensus, even though even there are parts that are in brackets, and then a whole second part with things still to be discussed. So they still have, I think, 2 years in the working group, so there still is some more time, but it's an exciting development. With the Pact of the Future, exactly, which mentions space resources. So that is to be followed. Bob, back to you. Now, you have, of course, made the space resources law to attract also the business, to enable the business of space resources. You have given now that first license for scooping up some regolith and selling that. And of course, you have to issue to assess the risks of an operation. Now, would there be commercial activities where you think the government would think twice before they would authorize and supervise it? As you said, this activity is perhaps pretty innocent. It doesn't really create a risk of harming. But we talked earlier in the week about private space stations, commercial space stations, where you will have astronauts living and working in space. Do you think the government would think twice about authorizing that in assessing the risk? Or are there other examples you could think of that would be less evident?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. Also, we have not yet had the case to assess or discuss or understand what it means to authorize activities or a full space station. I think what's always for us important is to understand the activity, the nature of the activity, make sure that for us there's a clear commercial driver, is non-military, is a very neutral activity, that it's responsible, safe, that the companies have the financial and technical means to operate what they want to operate, and that it's done in a professional way. So those are all these points are set out in the law. So I would not exclude a private station. As such, it depends a bit how it's set up. What do you do on the private station? At the moment, we know the ISS, where we do many different things. Maybe in the future you have parts of or some stations will be more specialized for certain activities. Obviously, when you have humans involved, it opens a whole new dimension. You need to be much. You need to answer different questions. So I think I'm not able to answer this question now if we would exclude it or not.
I'm not asking you to make a statement about.
But no, it's. I think we are interested to work with industry to enable those activities. So, and then find together what it means to do this in a. As I said, a safe and a responsible way, in a controlled way, and also limit the risk to the extent possible, knowing there's always a risk when you go to space. And I think it's always finding this balance, and the regulation should be enabling and not limiting these activities. We don't know what we want to regulate in 5 or 10 years from now, so it must be this evolving, I'm not sure if that's the right word, evolving regulation, but we all learn, will discover in the next 10 years these activities, and then we better understand the details to take care of. And that, I think, we are in this phase where there's a lot of innovation going on, there are a lot of new ideas, a lot of new actors, and it's find the right balance between over-regulation and non-regulation.
Yeah, and I think that distinctive feature of involving humans is probably another ballgame. And indeed, you would want to maybe do a thorough check in terms of financial sustainability so that the company doesn't go bankrupt and the astronauts are stranded in space or whatever. And of course, in the end, it's still the government which is responsible. So that there is that safety net. But we will see what time will bring. Time is going really fast. There was one question I wanted to ask Zhong Min from here. We have actually answered quite a few along the way already. But one is about D-Cell's pivotal role in deep space missions such as Space Lunar and Mars programs. How is China envisioning international collaboration for future lunar-based development or Mars sample return missions, particularly with countries that are not part of ILRS or Artemis? So it means, are states asked to join the program before they can participate in these activities, or is it not connected?
Firstly, the ILRS, the program is a lunar program, so therefore it's not. Of course, is if the partner of the ILRS will have some more benefits, will have some more priority for the international cooperation. But we have said is the deep space exploration, the mission cooperation is open to the whole of the world. So, for example, if for the Mars mission, if it's not the member of ILRS, but you still, if it's, your proposal could be some quite attractive, So it's because we have the experts who will have organize some of the committee. Will be evaluate each of the proposal come from different countries, from different scientists. So if this proposal is good enough, it will be have a very high of a scientific value. This is still quite a very high opportunity to have this priority of this cooperation on the Mars sample return mission. So as I know that is some of the European institute and scientists already have started prepared proposal and have shown the intention. And for the RS, of course, it's if the member of the RS will have some more benefit. For example, is under the RS, beside of the mission coordination, the system levels, cooperation, the equipment, the scientific payload piggyback, we also have designed some of a very special program like the CubeSat constellation, the international education and training, the scholarship program to especially the developing country. Therefore, this is a majority of the partnership of this RS. So if you are the member of the RS, you will have more share, more benefit to get this the feedback from those of the education training. For example, you can send more students to China to have a scholarship. You can have some for more participation into the student, the CubeSat participation like this. So there will be a little bit different, but as I said, it's open to whole of the world, no difference. Thank you.
Thank you. Join the club. The time is at 0 already. Can I ask one quick question to Gitanjali? Because they always say youth has the future, and I've heard several times over the past days, the future is now. What is your contribution as a representative of the next generation to governance of space exploration in 10 seconds, 20 seconds?
I think as Ranjana ma'am had mentioned about industry bodies like Indian Space Association, they have been very encouraging in sort of having young professionals contribute to this discussion. In addition to that, I would like to add a word, to maybe some conferences and events that are held in India. We do have a lot of potential to make it more diverse. And, we've seen that happening at the international level, but it can be increased even in India. So that's one thing that I would like to point out.
Great, and we have a whole next panel also focusing on the next generation. So I'm going to end it here. Sorry to overrun a bit. Thank you so much to all the panelists for sharing your thoughts freely. I think it was a very interesting discussion. Thank you.